Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I'll be talking about how Keystone Master is going to work in patch 9.1 with the addition of Mythic Plus score in game. There is some changes going on, and they are fairly big changes to how it works. We'll be going off this Wowhide article here, who introduced how it works basically tonight. And basically the headline is Season 2 Keystone Master requires plus 15s on both Tyrannical and Fortified in patch 9.1. I would revise that headline personally to say Season 2 Keystone Master requires 2000 Mythic Plus score. Here's how it works. And with that, let's see how it works. Just to recap, 2000 Mythic rating for Keystone Master, 1500 for the plus 10 equivalent in game right now, and 750 score for the plus 5 equivalent achievement in the game right now, the Keystone Explorer. So let's first talk about how the score works. We'll use plus 15 as the baseline. The baseline is 187 points for a plus 15 Keystone, but you really want to think of this more as a dungeon score, and your dungeon score equals or is equal to your tyrannical score plus your fortified score. So if you do it as the article suggests, do a plus 15 on tyrannical and fortified, you'd have 187 plus, instead of 187, whichever one was slightly slower is divided by 3. In this case, it would be 62 point something, and that's how they get their 249 number. So 187 plus 62, 249, and basically that doing each of that on every dungeon, 249 times 8, there's 8 total dungeons, leaves you just shy of 2000. However, I'm pretty sure with the decimals, when I was playing around with the math, that they'll probably just round up to 250 in game, because it'll be like 0.5 or 0.6 or something like that. So they'll probably round up to 250, and that you will probably end up having to do just that'll be enough. It'll end up equaling exactly 2000. So I think that's probably how it'll work. If not, it's okay, because there's actually other ways to make it up as well. So that's the baseline of how the score works. Now, basically, when you do a Keystone higher, so let's say a 16, instead of being worth 187, it's worth about 199. It's roughly plus 12. When you drop down one, it's minus 12. Up to plus 24, down to minus 24. This doesn't work out exactly as well. I'm assuming, again, because of some decimal stuff, so it's not exactly 12. It's 11.9 or 12.2 or something like that. But for the purposes of this video, it'll be close enough. It is roughly 12. So that's roughly how the score works. You want to get, on average, 250 score per dungeon, but you don't have to get 250 score per dungeon. You could technically skip a dungeon completely if you wanted to push your keys high enough. In other places, that would be incredibly hard to do and be kind of silly to do, because you might as well at least do like a plus 5 or something, right? And get your 60 points. It ends up equaling out more than that, actually, again, because of the decimal stuff. But to get like your base amount of points, you might as well at least do some level of Keystone for that dungeon. And yeah, so that's roughly how it works. So there's a lot of anger about this, and the anger is because of the headline, I assume, of having to do plus 15s and everything, because people think, oh, I barely did plus 15s total. This sucks, right? But what, and it might suck, right? Because especially if all of their 15s were on fortified week, and all their tyrannical keys are only like plus 10, that'll leave them, a bit short. If it's literally 15s across all 8, and then on average 10s on tyrannical across everywhere, that would leave them a bit short. That would require them to do more work than what they currently do. I did use myself as an example, though, because I'm not a hardcore Mythic Plus player myself. I do have KSM, but I barely have it. I'm not into Mythic Plus. It's very safe to say that I'm probably very similar to the average person who has KSM, like on the low end person who has KSM even. So with the current system, I would have about a 1914 score in game right now. So if you just magically put this system into the game right now, and based on my current stats, not the current system, based on my current stats, I would have a 1914. But that's when I realized that there was also this very important line that no one's talking about, and that's that you get up to 10 points or added or subtracted based on how fast you complete it. So a non-time, I assume, would be minus 10. So instead of 187 of barely on time, I assume that would be minus 10. I'm not sure exactly how they worded this because they kind of contradict that later on because they say barely made it. So is that it's hard to say, but let's just assume that two chesting, instead of worrying about how it goes down, let's talk about how it goes up. So assuming if you two chest something, that's good enough to be the plus 10 points, right? So actually would it be at 1934, and without looking, it might actually be at 1944, but let's just say 1934. So plus 20 because I have at least two keys that are of my highest that are also two chested. So 1934, and I have actually not run a Theater of Pain on Tyrannical this entire season. Not a plus one, or not a plus two, not a plus three, not a plus four, etc. I've not run a Theater of Pain on Tyrannical. So if I ran a Theater of Pain plus 10 on Tyrannical, that would put me at about 1976 score, which means I need 24 somewhere else, which is a very convenient number since our coefficient is 12 for ranking up a dungeon. So instead of, I have a Halls on Fortified and Tyrannical. So let's just say I run a Halls Fortified plus 17. That gives me 24 more score, and I'm at the score. So for me personally, a very casual Mythic Plus player, I would need to run two more dungeons, a Theater of Pain 10 on Tyrannical, and a Halls 17 on Fortified. I don't have to do that. That's just what I'm using for an example. And then I would have the KSM with this new system as a very casual player. Now, I don't know if any players are running plus or getting KSM and only running 16 dungeons. I mean, I assume you would have to pay for a boost then because you wouldn't have any score or whatever. Like you would have to be boosting in some way or getting carried in some way, I'd imagine. The way I figure it, you probably on average, even the most casual KSM players got to be getting 25 to 30. Now, if you were just hoping to get KSM with this new system, then it's definitely more work because. But the reality is, whether it's the old system or the new system, you're going to have to run some dungeons, and you could definitely do the same amount of dungeons as the old system, even as a casual player. You could do the same amount of dungeons. You would just want to game them out in a different way instead of finding okay, this is a good week to do my 15 fortified on this dungeon with these good affixes with it. Instead, you're like, oh, this is a really good week to go above 15 on this key, and then I get extra score, and I can go lower on my Sanguine Depths, and I don't even have to do a 15 on Sanguine Depths. And so there's just a different game being played, but it is roughly the same. And that was probably the biggest point I would like to make in this video, is the systems are roughly the same, and I assume that's intentional to try to make the score system kind of equal the previous system, right? The previous Keystone Master system, while also managing to make is the proper word, but to get people to run Tyrannical more, which is harder. Now, this is not a perfect system by any way. What I personally would do is I would make Tyrannical worth more. I thought that was going to be the case on its own. I thought that I had heard that somewhere, but I guess not. I thought Tyrannical is going to be worth more. So what I mean by that is a Tyrannical dungeon would be worth either one or two more coefficients than a Fortified. So in this case, plus 12 or plus 24 more. So you would only need to do it, again, using Wowhead's example of running straight 15s on each. The way I would do it is you would basically need to run plus 13s Tyrannical and plus 15s Fortified, and that would equal out to the score as well. So I do think that is what I would suggest to do. I actually logged on the PTR just to give that as feedback on the PTR to say that, to make the Tyrannical worth more. You still would have to run the same amount of dungeons, but it would be a little bit easier to acquire it for the most casual of players who might want to actually achieve KSM. And I think it's both fair because most high-end players think Tyrannical is probably worth more as well. So I don't think that change would really upset anybody, and it would probably just make everybody pretty happy and pretty understanding about it. So that's what I would do personally. And then I do want to talk about this just a little bit more. This whole 10 points rewarded based on speed. Basically, the way I read that is if you just two chest a bunch of 14s, that's almost equal. Like if you two chested every dungeon at 14, it would almost equal the 2000 rating. You'd be just shy. You'd be like, what, 16 points shy or something like that. which is actually pretty cool. So in theory, instead of running all 15s, you could essentially, if this is correct, up to 10 points for completing the dungeon extra fast. In theory, you could run all 14s really fast, and then two 15s really fast. Is that how it would work? I believe. And then and then two 15s really fast, or just one 16 at regular speed. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but let's just make it real easy. You run a 17 miss on fortified in time, and then you run 14s on every other dungeon with two chests. And I think under this system that would get you the 2000 score. I'm not positive on that. You might start. They said it's linear, so I assume so. And that's an interesting thing that no one's really talking about. So not only do you not have to run plus 15s necessarily on everything, you might only have to run one dungeon above plus 15 to equal it out. Again, I'm not sure if that's exactly how that works, but it is, it's an interesting thing. At the very least, you definitely can go a little bit lower as long as you're going faster on some of your dungeons at least. So that's kind of cool. And something that I haven't seen anyone in the comments or anything even mentioning that part. So it's a very interesting part, and it reminds me a little bit of the kill streak thing in Torghast, where it's more of a bonus if you go really fast. You get the 4 stars no matter what, but if you go really fast, you get the 5 stars, and so it's kind of a different way to get your. Obviously, in Torghast, you have to get the 5 stars to do the adamant vaults, but in theory, you could do KSM's more like getting a 4-star, right? So, sorry about the weird analogy there, but I've run a lot of Torghast on the PTR, and it kind of reminds me of that in a way, to where speed does matter, and you can get some good extra points by going fast. So that's definitely something to consider, especially because some dungeons you can push them pretty fast on a plus 14, even as a fairly casual player. So. That's how this works. It's not a perfect system by any means. I'm not endorsing the system by any means. I think it's fine though. I like that I can game it. I like that. For me, I don't mind. I'm gonna try to push 20s for the portals, right? That they're putting in for this patch. So I'm gonna try to do that. But even if I can't, I might still, I know I can, but even if I don't, I might still push Mist of Tyrannus Scythe to 20 on both, do 20s of Tyrannus Scythe, and now I can subtract 10 Keystone levels somewhere else. And I like that I can game that out and not have to do dungeons that I don't like at a very high difficulty, and not have to do them on 15 at all, whether it's fortified or tyrannical. So I do like the gaming out of it. I think if you like that kind of stuff, you'll like it. If you just like the straightforward nature of, I'm just going to do 115 of each, I am going to build up my gear and do the 30 dungeons or whatever that the person on average does at the very casual end of KSM. But I'm just going to do 1 of 15. It's always going to be unfortified. That person is going to have a little bit tougher time. 100%. Maybe their score in game right now, like mine was 1934, maybe their score in game right now is like 1800 or something like that. So it's still only 200 points to make up, but that is a decent amount of points to make up. So that person will struggle a little bit more. People who have anything pushed at all, so they're like, well, I really hate Sanguine Depths, so I've only, I did the 15 on Sanguine Depths. On Tyrannical, I only have a plus 10 done of it, but I really pushed my Mists and Halls keys, and so I actually am way over the score if the score was implemented in game. So I barely have the KSM still. I only have 1 plus 15 completed on Sanguine Depths. I barely have KSM, but I'm way over the score because I really pushed this other key that was pretty easy for me and my friends or my group or my guild or whatever. So that's another way to look at it. But yeah, that's how KSM is going to work in 9.1. Don't shoot the messenger if you hate it. I don't mind it, but I would do the changes to tyrannical. So, as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.